G'day poker people, welcome back. After some good results in the previous session, we are slowly inching our way back up to that magic number of $60 an hour, but we are not quite there yet. Actually, not by a long shot, in all honesty. So I was back in on a Saturday evening, looking to put some more volume in the 1-3 games at Derby Lane, and looking to put in a good performance and good results. Wouldn't be bad either. Really need some if we are going to make the $60 an hour by the end of December. So let's not waste any more time and get to gambling. Let's go. It's 5 p.m. and after some pretty brutal traffic, we are straight in the 1-3 mix for, you know it, 1,000 bangers where we play this first interesting hand. The tight aggressive cutoff opens at 4.15 and the action's on my button with Queen 9 suited. I think this is a 3-bet or fold spot, particularly with this hand, and you know me, folding is boring. I go ahead and 3-bet it up to 50 and then we get called by the cutoff. So we're going heads up to a flop of Ace Jack Jack with 2 clubs. When the action checks it over to me, really don't want to be betting this board very aggressively. I think the opponent has a lot of ace-x hands in their range, and I just really want to bet a polarized range in this spot. And I suppose we are on the weaker end of the hands we're going to have here, but it's just like we're such a dog with this hand in particular to any ace-x combination that I would rather bet on this board with something that had a gut shot or a backdoor flush draw. So I decide to check it back, see what the opponent does on the turn. And when the turn's the 7 of diamonds, putting out backdoor diamonds, they check it over to me again. And now I think we have the green light to bluff here. I think my opponent would have bet most of their ace-x combinations on the turn on a board this wet. So I'm just going to go ahead and bet and try to put the screws to his pocket pairs that are like pocket 10s or worse. So I go ahead and make it 45, and then the cutoff throws in the call, which isn't awful. I think the opponent might call once with those pocket pairs. We just need to kind of put in the second bullet on the river, and when the river is the Jack of Hearts, it's actually a pretty scary river because now those pocket pairs do make a full house, and relative to the hand I'm representing, I am representing a hand that's going to be better than most of their full houses, but sometimes opponents don't care about that and they just go off the absolute strength of their hand. But things get interesting because the opponent gives me a bit of a stare down, like just really staring daggers at me, trying to be intimidating, I think is what's going on, before they check it over to me. And now when they're staring me down, trying to intimidate me, it makes me think that they're really weak, and that even if they do have a full house, I don't think they're going to want to call off with it. So it just absolutely gives me yet another green light to bluff in this spot. Definitely want to use a really large sizing since we are trying to get a full house to fold. So I go ahead and make it 220, and then the villain folds. So we're kicking things off with a bluff. You love to see it. G'day poker people, I'm here today to tell you about my new favourite app that is helping me improve my game day by day, and it is the Fastroll Poker app. Essentially what it is, it's a hand history tracker for live poker players, something akin to Poker Tracker for online poker, but they're bridging the gap and they're making it for live players and following a very user-friendly, intuitive software. You can input the hand histories literally right after you're done playing them in a matter of seconds. It takes me about 15 to 30 seconds after I've played each hand, and they're stored on a database inside the app. And the beautiful thing about that is after the session's over, I can go back and look over the hands I've played and see what I'm doing well, and more commonly where I've punted off a lot of money, and thus helping me know what the leaks in my games are and then how I can plug them. So I cannot recommend this app strongly enough if you are a serious poker player who wants to help improve your game. I've been offered many sponsorship deals in the past from things I think were a bit shady. This is the first thing I actually wanted to promote because I think it is actually a very good tool which will help you guys actually improve your poker game. So if you want to try it out, use the code LEBETS when you purchase an annual subscription and you'll get the first month free. If you don't like it after the first month, you're totally fine to cancel without charge, but I really think you guys are going to love this app and can't recommend it strongly enough. It's a massive tool to help your game. So use the code LEBETS on an annual subscription and you'll get the first month free. For now though, let's fast roll back into the gambling. So it's a hot start. Let's keep the momentum rolling. So we're playing 5-handed for this one. So I'm under the gun, but it's like low-key actually just the hijack. So when I peel 9-8 of clubs, I raise it up to 15, and then I only get called by a passive button. So it heads up to a flop of 10-10-6 with 2 spades. When the action's on me, as a default, I like checking it out of position in a heads-up pot, particularly against a passive opponent who I think is going to have a lot of continues on this board. So I check it over to them, and they do check back. So we get a free turn. I'm glad we do because we turn a pair on the 8 of spades. Now I think it's a good spot to go ahead and bet for a bit of value. I think if my opponent has any Broadway card that has a spade, they're going to call. Plus, if they have a pair that's worse than mine, I think they'll probably call as well. So I decide to go ahead and bet 25, and then they do throw in the call pretty quickly. So we get to see a river, which is the 10 of hearts, giving us a full house. So it's interesting because I think much like the last hand, my opponent does have a lot of full houses in their range. If they have a 6x, if they have like pocket fours through pocket twos, I think they're probably going to call a bet as long as they don't go too large. And this is something that is definitely exploitable in my strategy. But here I'm going to use a smaller size bet because I want to get called by worse full houses, whereas in the previous hand, I wanted to fold out full houses, so I went large. So I decided to go ahead and bet 30 here. Could maybe go a little bit bigger. I mean, I really don't think pocket fours is going to fold if I bet like 50. So yeah, maybe missing a bit of EV with a smaller bet here. Whatever the case, I make it 30, and then the button throws in the call. We show our hand, and then the opponent shows ace-6 of hearts. So let's go. We're getting value, full house over full house. This next one's a fun one. So there's two open limps in front of us before we're in the big blind, and we peel the absolutely gorgeous hand of 9-2 offsuit. Now, typically I would like raising my premiums when people limp to me, but I think I'm going to play this one as a trap. So I check it back and take a free flop, which is ace-ace deuce rainbow. When the small blind checks it over to me, I want to go ahead and bet here, mostly for equity denial reasons. There are no good turn cards in the world for us, so just really hoping to fold out hands like Jack 10 or something. So I go ahead and bet 10, and then the passive under the gun player calls and the small blind folds. So it heads up to a turn, which is the 2 of hearts, making us yet another full house in this session. What is going on? We're making monsters. Having said that though, I actually think there's a really good reason to play this hand cautious. My opponent definitely has worse hands that can call a bet. If they have anything from like pocket fours through pocket kings, they're definitely not going to fold if I barrel on this turn card. Having said that, I think we do have to play it cautious because sure, they have a bunch of those pocket pair hands in their range, but they also have a lot of offsuit ace-x combinations. So I go ahead and play this hand a bit cautious, which I think is wise. I check it over to them, and they check back. So now we're feeling really good about the strength of our hand. So when the river's the 8 of clubs, I just want to go ahead and bet for value here, trying to get thick value from pocket pairs that checked back on the turn. Not too worried about an ace-x combination when my opponent checked back. It's not impossible that they did that. I just think it's really unlikely. So I go ahead and bet 40, and then under the gun announces I have 2 full houses. So that's not good. They throw in the call. I'm assuming they have an ace. I show my hand anyway, and then they turn over ace-2. So they got us good sneaky check back on the turn, because otherwise I would have not value bet so big. But yeah, evaluating ourselves with a thin value bet in this spot. I know it's almost incomprehensible that we would lose a hand with 9-2 offsuit, but we're going to have to battle back and maybe play some worse hands. So there's one limper, and then I'm in the cutoff with Queen 10 offsuit. I know it's not as good as the 9-2, but maybe this joke is getting old. I go ahead and raise this one up to 20, and then I only get called by a passive small blind. So it heads up to a flop of 8-3 deuce with 2 clubs. When the villain checks it over to me, I want to go ahead and c-bet on this board. I think my opponent's going to have a lot of natural folds with like King Jack, King 10 type hands, which we really don't want to give a free turn to because we could accidentally cooler ourselves. So I go ahead and bet 20. And then the villain throws in the call. So it heads up to a turn, which is the 3 of clubs, not only pairing middle pair, but also putting in the front door flush. When the villain checks it over to me, I wouldn't hate checking back here and just giving up. I think my opponent is going to have a lot of really strong hands in their range, essentially a bunch of 8x plus hands, a bunch of flushes, even a full house, not totally out of the question. Having said that though, I think if we go ahead and bet small here, we probably will be called very frequently, but if we bet a small enough size, we're probably going to get raised by most of his flushes, and maybe full houses do like to slow play, particularly at 1-3, but at least we'll have a bit of a warning shot if my opponent does have a really nutted hand. So I keep barreling at it. I go ahead and bet 50. And then the villain doesn't think too long before throwing in the call. So we are heads up to a river, which is the 5 of spades. Absolutely no help for us. We have Queen High in a dream on the river. But when the villain checks it over to me, my read on the turn was if they did turn a flush, so that they would check raise my smaller bet, trying to get money in the pot when we're this deep. Somewhat possible they do have a full house and they're trapping, but I think if they have any hand that's 8x, pocket 9s, pocket 10s, don't think they're going to be able to call a really large bet on this river, being worried that I do have a flush or a bigger overpair myself as a pre-flop aggressor. So I decide to hold my breath and go for it in this spot. I go ahead and bet 225, and then villain is in the tank. We are loving that we are not getting snap called or snap raised in this spot, and after about 60 seconds of tanking, the villain folds his hands. Let's go. You love to see it. We are getting our bluffs through today. That definitely makes for some fun poker at Derby Lane. I got a feeling this next hand is going to be pretty controversial, but hear me out in terms of my thinking. Anyway, this one is a double board bomb pod. Love these bloody things, and particularly when I have the button, which I do for this hand. And my hand is 10-4 offsuit, so not the best hand in the world, but I will definitely take playing these bomb pots in position. So we are 7 ways to 2 different flops. The first one is a 7-4-3 with 2 clubs, so we have middle pair there, and the second one is 10-7-3 with 2 diamonds. So we have top pair on that one. So we flop pretty decent enough in my opinion that when the action checks to me, I'm going to go ahead and mix in a bit of a bet here in position. I think if any of the opponents had a nutted hand, at least with some frequency, they would be going ahead and leading themselves. So when we do have pretty good equity in both boards when we are positioned, I think we're going to benefit a lot from betting here and thinning out the field a bit. So I go ahead and make it 30, and then I get called by passive under the gun player as well as a tight aggressive cutoff. So we're 3 ways to 2 different turns. The first one is the 9 of hearts. The second one is the 5 of spades, and things get interesting here when the under the gun player leads shoves for 175 and then the cutoff folds. So I think if the cutoff called there, we'd have pretty easy fold, but I'm really tempted to call in this spot just because I think if the opponent did have a hand that would scoop us, something like a big overpair, something like pocket tens, or even a set on either board, I really think that they would have just gone ahead and bet the flop, or at least check raise the flop. So I think the majority of their range is made up of stuff that turned equity on the turns, stuff like 6-4 or pocket nines that have the nuts on one of the boards, stuff like Jack 10 and 10-8 that now have a straight draw on the top board, at 7-5 and 7-9 make a lot of sense as well. And we actually chop against all of those hands. And there's also 6-8, which is open-ended on both boards, and we actually scoop against that hand. The only logical hand that really scoops us, in my opinion, is 10-9. So when their range is mostly made up of stuff we chop against, a few things we scoop, a few things that scoop us, I really don't want to be folding out my equity here. So I decide to make a pretty loose call here. I throw in the call, and then the under the gun player shows Jack 10 offsuit. So there you go. We are actually chopping with that hand. They do have a few outs on the top board. When the first river is the 6 of clubs, that is not going to be one of them, and we are most likely winning half of the pot. And the second board is the king of spades. So there we go. We end up chopping after I make what might be a pretty insane hero call. Let me know what you think below, but we do end up chopping this pot after, a pretty loose call. Let me know what you think though. Maybe it is just a bit of a spewy call that I got lucky with. This next hand is real juicy because we have not only one, but 2 straddles on, so we're playing a bit of a 1-3-6-12 for this hand. You absolutely froth to see it, and what you like to see even more after a passive, a low jack limps. The action's on my small blind with king queen of clubs. What? How do we wake up with this premium here? I am running good today. You love to see it. I go ahead and raise it up to 60, and then I only get called by a passive player to my direct left. So we go heads up to a flop of 10-6-4 with 2 clubs. So if we weren't running hot enough already, we flop the second nut flush draw. Having said that though, I still want to check this hand out of position to the passive opponent, who I think, particularly with the double straddle dynamics on, isn't always going to 3-bet his overpairs. So I really want to go ahead and check it over to what is likely a strong range and see what they do, gauge what their hand strength is. When they check it back, I'm not super convinced they're strong, which is, I'm not going to complain about this, but we do turn a flush on the 5 of clubs. I just don't really expect them to have a super strong range here, but still want to go ahead and bet, really trying to lower the SPR so we can get all in on the river, and we just want to bet like the maximum, like ace of clubs, queen of hearts will call. So I decide to make a 100, and then the opponent throws in the call. So love that we're getting action here, and we're heads up to a river, which is the ace of spades. This is a beautiful river because now the SPR is exactly 1, and it's going to be really, really hard for my opponent to fold like ace of clubs X hand. They could also have a bunch of 2 pairs on this river as well. So I think there is absolutely nothing to do but go all in here. I rip it all in for 340, and then my opponent hits the tank and they look absolutely pained, like in complete distress. I'm guessing that they really did not like the ace on the river, and they probably have an underpair to it. So I'm pretty much expecting them to fold if they are in the tank at all. And then they do end up saying that they fold, and they show me what they had, and it was 9-7 of clubs. What? How are they folding a worse flush here? This is insane for me to not get paid off with this dynamic. Oh my God, I can't believe it. They make one of the craziest folds I've ever seen. And like, in all honesty, I'm unlucky that I was at the top of my range here, because if I had a hand like pocket aces or ace 10, I would be ripping it all in for value. If I was bluffing in this spot, I would be absolutely laughing. Unfortunately, I had the second nuts, and apparently betting the second nuts is too thin in this spot for some reason. But wow, super impressive fold by the villain. I'm honestly like wondering if they saw my cards when I peeled them pre-flop or something, because I really can't explain it unless they're just crazy money scared to not pay off the 340. It just feels like something a bit like they saw my cards or something is going on, because I'm not going to accuse them of cheating or anything, but it feels like a move someone who is marking cards would make. I don't know. I don't want to accuse anyone of anything. There could be some other explanation, so you don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's just so suspicious that they could make this fold in this spot. Like, how did they know I had a bigger flush? I just don't understand, in all honesty. I can't explain this fold. It's absolutely insane, and somehow we don't get full value with our second nut flush here. So in all honesty, I was a little psyched out after that last hand, like he was reading my cards or he marked the cards or something. I don't know. It's just the vibe was off and I wasn't feeling great about the game anymore. So I did decide to rack up and leave after playing 4 hours. Very happy with my play overall today. Few mistakes notwithstanding. I definitely think I missed value with the 9-8 full house on the river. Can bet something like 50, maybe even 60 and still get called by worse full houses. And I don't think we have to be too worried about my opponent having a better boat or quads. And maybe the 9-2 offsuit river bet is a little too thin, particularly for the overbet sizing. We definitely fell into the trap that my opponent set by checking on the turn. Not a huge mistake, if anything, though. Outside of that, I really do like a lot of my other plays. All my bluffs got through today, which is fantastic. I really liked my hero call with the 10-4. It's definitely pretty thin, but I think it's a good spot to go for it, because I think we're chopping like almost always, given the hands that were out there and the range of hands my opponent might be shoving on the turn. Didn't expect them to have Jack 10, in all honesty, so maybe they would take a weird line with their overpairs, but yeah, I just think they just chopping the vast majority of the time, so I didn't want to fold out my equity, so pretty happy with that. Got all my bluffs through, that's always fun, and the king-queen hand, honestly, I think I played it well. I just ran into the tightest villain ever, or maybe a villain who was literally cheating. I don't know, I can't explain that fold, but I'm happy with my line regardless. I think it makes most EV in the long run, for sure. Just wish I had a bluff in that spot, in all honesty. Whatever the case, I'm going to give myself an A grade for the play today. Very happy with it. Had pretty good results as well. We made 580 on the session, which is nothing to sneeze at. It actually does put us closer to the $60 an hour at 1-3. We're up to $52 an hour, so definitely within striking distance of that $60. We just need to keep this momentum up and keep playing well for the sessions going forward. So make sure you hit subscribe and you'll get the next video when it comes out, as we are going closer towards the home stretch of this challenge and closer towards the $6 an hour. Knock on wood, hopefully. So for now, I'm out of here. Namaste.